Good morning, and welcome back to Lopes on Movies. My name is Joey Lopes, and today I am joined, live from New York. Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty okay.
And I'm also joined by Kyle, although Kyle will only be here for a brief portion of this episode.
It's true. I have, I'm a busy guy.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody can see a movie every week. It's not easy to get out there to go to the movies all the time. In fact, me and Mark didn't even go to the movies, technically. But we did see movies, and we will get to the movies in the next portion of this episode. But before we get to that, we have to talk about Jeremy Renner. So last week, we spent a little bit of time on Jeremy Renner's, fledgling music career, which was, it was a lot of fun. We listened to his teaser video for his tune "Heaven Don't Have a Name." But
we listened to it all right.
By complete coincidence, Jeremy Renner has been having something of a moment on the internet over the past few days, and kind of like throughout like film Twitter. So what we discovered was that Jeremy Renner actually has an app. So this is an app that you can download on your phone, your Android or iPhone phone, called Jeremy Renner, and
just called Jeremy Renner.
It's just called Jeremy Renner. Yeah, and the purpose of this app, at least as far as any of us can tell, is that it's for super fans of Jeremy to congregate and kind of share their love for all things Renner. And of course, it also has an audio player built in, so you can listen to his music whenever you want. Of course. Which, I mean, no good Jeremy Renner app wouldn't have such a feature. So, guys, this is some app, isn't it?
It's pretty incredible.
It's something else.
It definitely feels like a virus.
It does a little bit.
It also feels like an Instagram ripoff that's Jeremy Renner themed.
It definitely
for some reason.
Yeah, it's pretty much just a Jeremy Renner themed Instagram.
Yes.
Which is wild. Like so Kyle.
It's as dumb as it sounds.
Kyle, since we have you on the show specifically to talk about the Renner app today.
I'm an expert after all.
Is there anything you can tell us about your experience with the app?
So I haven't opened the app in a few days. So first, I should state that my post got deleted. It appears I was one of the trolls that got their post deleted.
Oh, that's too
bad. The Wild West is ending.
When I posted a picture of a Hawkeye toy, and I said, "Who else loves the Green Comet?" and that got deleted pretty hard. So
that's definitely not the worst thing that's been on the app.
No, we should clarify that when this app kind of went viral over the past couple of days, there was a lot of bad actors that would say that joined the app. The funniest
comedians though.
The funniest thing about it is that there's no like restriction on the app for what your name is. So there was a lot of people that just used the name Jeremy Renner with the same like profile picture as the actual Renner, and were posting some truly obscene things.
I think when we first realized this, you called it a cesspool. I believe was the word you used.
But I mean, the important thing about the app experience, though, I just want to start. So when you first download the app, you open the app, and the first thing you see is this kind of like sultry picture of Jeremy Renner in black and white.
Straight headshot.
Yeah, just a headshot.
It really gets you in the mood.
It's kind of staring at you. And then immediately after that, there's a brief, like, minute-long video of Jeremy Renner in, like, his house, kind of explaining what the app is. And he says that the app, with the app, he'll be allowed to share his most intimate moments or something like that. And he specifically mentions that he will not share pictures of himself while he's in the shower.
No.
And I remember thinking, like, okay, I didn't realize we were going there, but the fact that he brought it up instantly brings us to a very weird place. So even outside of the trolls, I mean, we're talking about a place where the fans call the day Wednesday Ren's Day. This is a weird app. This is
very weird.
This is not a place that you would want to hang out in for too long. lest you
No.
like kind of get indoctrinated into the cult of Renner. Which, I mean,
It's
maybe
apparently a thing, yeah.
maybe the scariest part is that it has push notifications, which I was not aware
gosh.
of at first. So I just the other day I was just minding my own business, and I opened my phone and I see a message from Jeremy Renner that just says, "Hey, keep on rocking."
Like I think we got one the other day that was like, "It's gonna be a great weekend," like with like a winky face or something like that.
And so
Thanks, Jeremy.
If I can't say I am a Renner fan in the
Not
way
a Renner head.
I'm not a Renner head in the way that the serious members of the Renner app are, but I if you're into Renner and if you're into like really weird things, this is kind of a window into the strange world of Jeremy Renner fandom. And
Yes.
You probably missed the best part of this app, though. I think it's kind of died down a bit.
Yeah, the moderators had done a good job kind of cleaning up
props
the
to those guys.
props to the Jeremy Renner app moderators. They're doing
job,
God's
guys.
work.
Yeah. Just to let anyone know, if you think about joining this app, if you want to like things, you have to pay for likes. So, there's a great deal on here. If you want to get 60,800 likes, which includes 20,000 free likes, it only costs $394.99.
Wow, what a great value.
Yeah.
But hey, it's important to remember that all of the proceeds will go right into Jeremy Renner's music career.
Right into his loaded pocket.
right into his making new music and paying for his recording studio fund. So it's a good deal if you want to hear more Jeremy Renner music. Well, thank you, Kyle, for joining us for this Renner app discussion.
Problem. I'm glad I could help. Long live the Green Comet.
Let's talk about the movies that we saw.
Yeah.
So much like previous weeks, we didn't actually see anything new in theaters this week, regrettably. There were a couple of options. I think we could have seen a movie called Killer Man with Liam Hemsworth, but I don't know what that was supposed to be. I never heard anything about it, and the reviews were terrible, so that didn't really entice me too much to leave my house.
Pretty limited showings, too.
Yeah, it was I don't know. And there's a couple of things out, like we could have seen the new Angel Has Fallen movie, whatever this one's called. I don't know. Which would have been a great time, obviously, because we would have gotten to see Gerard Butler and his dad Nick Nolte save the president Morgan Freeman. But for me anyway, I felt like I needed to see something else, because I actually recently bought a subscription to the Criterion Channel, which is a streaming service for the Criterion Collection. But they also have a lot of other movies up there just from classic filmmakers. And I bought this subscription because I was like, you know what, I want to watch more, great movies from the history of film. So that's what I decided to do. I just kind of like dug through their list of movies that are going to be leaving the service soon, because then there's like some urgency there. It's like, oh man, I got to see these before they run out.
That helps limit your options, yeah.
It does, because I was, if you just go to the browse page, it's like, oh my god, what do I do?
Just a deluge of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, all right, I'll do this. But I landed on a movie called A Matter of Life and Death. This is a film from 1946. It was directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, who are collectively known as the Archers. And they are two of the most celebrated British filmmakers of all time. Some of their best-known movies would include The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, Black Narcissus, and The Red Shoes. I've seen both Black Narcissus and The Red Shoes, both very, very great films. So, A Matter of Life and Death. Here's the basic premise. A Royal Air Force pilot named Peter Carter is shot down somewhere over England. But before the plane goes down, he manages to get in contact with a radio operator named June, to whom he gives his dying wishes. He bails from the plane without a parachute because his was damaged when the plane was hit, but miraculously, he wakes up on the beach the next morning and he seems more or less perfectly fine. He manages to track down June, not even like 10 minutes after he wakes up, And of course, the two of them fall in love and they live happily ever after. Except, it turns out that the spirits of the afterlife were supposed to take him when he bailed from the plane. But, and this is not a joke, but because of the cloudy skies of England, they missed him.
I mean, it is a joke, though, right?
Oh yeah, no. The movie plays. It's supposed to be funny.
That's good.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. But so a representative from the afterlife named Conductor 71. He's like a very, very like stereotypical French aristocrat. Very interesting performance. He comes down to Earth to explain to Peter that they made a mistake and we need to bring you to the land of the dead because that's where you actually belong. Peter, of course, is not, too thrilled with this news, and he protests, and he makes the very reasonable argument that, it's not his fault that they messed up and they failed to take him, and that while he was perfectly content with dying when he bailed from that plane, he gave his dying wishes, he had made peace with it. Circumstances had changed due to his survival, because, of course, he fell in love with June, and now the two of them have, plans for a life together. So he demands that the gods, or whatever these afterlife people are, grant him the opportunity to appeal his death sentence. Meanwhile, and then in addition to all of that, Peter is being treated for potential insanity due to the fact that he keeps saying that this weird French aristocrat guy from the afterlife is telling him that he was supposed to die and he needs to appeal his death. The movie never really tells you if Peter is crazy or not, or if the afterlife stuff is actually happening. But yeah, there's a whole element of this that is very much rooted in like actual like psychology and medical like brain injury stuff. So it's there's a lot going on here. This is a pretty jam-packed movie. There might
kind of giving me American Werewolf in London vibes a little bit.
I've never seen it. What is the
that's a good
what's the
there's
comparison?
A very similar plot line where the main character is wondering if he's going nuts because he sees his dead friend. He's talking to him throughout the movie.
Sure.
And this Conductor 71 guy is reminding me of that. Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on, and I think there might be a bit too much going on for my tastes. It feels like the movie has a lot in its mind, and I don't think everything is really given the time it needs to breathe. I think the biggest victim of that would be the whole romance plot, which is really like the core of the movie, like the romance between Peter and June. But it's very much kind of a love at first sight kind of situation. It doesn't really feel like there's much more to it than that, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think I kind of like the idea where it's just like these two are obviously meant to be together and are in love, and there's nothing, there's no need to interrogate it. It's just that simple. There's something charming about that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it feels like it didn't really like move me that much, their romance. It was more of just kind of like, okay.
It's a thing that
I'm cool. I'm cool with this, but
yeah,
it's really like supposed to be the emotional core of the movie, and your mileage will vary. I mean, there's some people that like really, really love this movie and think of it as like a major classic. For me, it's not quite on the same level as like The Red Shoes, which is just a crazy, crazy good movie. One of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. But yeah, so, and in addition to like just there being a lot of things going on, the climax of the movie is also kind of strange. It essentially turns into a courtroom drama in the afterlife where Peter's appeal case is litigated. But most of the time spent there is kind of just spent scrutinizing like British and American relations, like in like a very political kind of foreign policy
like
way.
A satire, or
no, it's like literally they're talking about like British and American relations. Like the Peter picks as his like lawyer, basically his representative. I don't want to spoil too much, but he's a British guy, and the prosecuting attorney is somebody who was killed in like the Revolutionary War, like an American who was killed by the Brits in the Revolutionary War. So he's very biased against the British, which is why he's like he takes on this case to basically say, no, Peter, you have to be dead because I don't like British people, basically. But like the whole thing is just like them like going back and forth about American and British relations, and it's like, I thought this was a love story. And that's not, again, like this is all like gripping stuff. Like the writing is fantastic, obviously, and like in the best kind of like courtroom drama sort of way, in a very classic movie kind of thing. But it just doesn't really gel that well, at least not for me anyway, with the sort of more emotional, love will conquer all other element of the movie.
Okay.
But either way, I mean, like you gotta admire a movie like this.
It sounds like it's got a lot of charm.
It does. There's a lot of really like the premise hooked me like immediately. So I think like the thing that really struck me about this though is the special effects and kind of the Technicolor cinematography. Like half the movies in color and half the movies in black and white. They actually do a weird thing where the afterlife world is in black and white and the real world is in Technicolor, which is kind of interesting that they did it that way as opposed to the other way around.
Like the inverse of the Oz style. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was interesting. But the design of the afterlife world is like super interesting and beautiful, and there's like some very like interesting special effects. Like there's this one like set piece that's basically like the stairway to heaven, and it's like a moving staircase, almost like an escalator, but in this kind of like weird like space universe thing. Like it's very like deliberately created special effect, and it's the kind of thing that made me think about like kind of modern special effects and how like the magic of special effects doesn't really exist anymore because we're so used to just seeing like anything is possible now, where like CGI can basically do anything, and they pretty much throw everything at the wall in these big like CGI movies where like you're just seeing like a mess of like the most fantastic images ever, to the point where you're like, it just doesn't affect us anymore. Like we're not really transported by special effects anymore. But I feel like when you watch an old movie, and especially a movie like this from like the 40s, and you see these like really, really deliberate high quality special effects in this beautiful Technicolor landscape, it kind of brings that magic back a little bit for me, And I don't know if that's just like because I'm used to watching old movies at this point. I don't just think of it as like, oh, that's an old special effect. But when it's really well done and really artfully done, like it can be really like mind blowing. And it's not to say that CGI can't be, but I feel like at this point, most CGI special effects that we see don't really do much for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just kind of like, oh, yeah, whatever. It's
like we take it for granted,
thing.
Like that's, and I don't feel like they took for granted the special effects back then in movies like this. Like everything is very, very deliberately.
They only really stick out when they're bad nowadays.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's never a good thing. And maybe like sometimes you see an old special effect and you're like, okay, like this is obviously a special effect, right? But to me, that doesn't really take me out of a movie with special effects, because I feel like no matter what, like you can tell if something's a special effect. Like CGI can look very good, but you still know in your brain that it's fake when you see like a monster appear, right?
Yeah.
So like what's the difference between that and seeing an old movie that did something like practically or did a different kind of special effect? You still have to suspend your disbelief. You still know it's not real in both cases. It's just there's something charming to me about the practical special effects and the way that they're very artfully
the imperfection
handled.
Yeah,
but that's really what Powell and Pressburger are well known for, is just kind of their insane Technicolor worlds that they create. And it's some beautiful stuff. But if I was going to recommend a movie by them, go see The Red Shoes, because The Red Shoes is really, really special. And it's, to me, it's like it exemplifies the very, very best of the Technicolor filmmaking era.
Maybe we'll have to talk about that one specifically at some point, because I'd be interested in watching something by these guys from what you said. Oh,
absolutely. You definitely should. They are at the very top of many people's lists.
Cool.
Well, all right. I think that's all I got to say. Mark, I heard that you watched a film or two as well.
Yeah, one that might be significantly less nuanced or charming, I guess. But it's got its own appeal. Yeah, I chose to watch The Raid 2 because I had been putting that off for quite a while after being a little bit lukewarm on the first one.
Yeah, I remember people talking about the first Raid movie like crazy. Like they were hyping it up so much. I never saw it.
Yeah, so The Raid 2 is probably best known as the sequel to the movie that inspired Dredd, which is probably one of the best recent action movies.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
I just love that.
Yeah.
So, as far as just quick introduction, So the Raid 2 follows the sole survivor of the events of the Raid 1. He's now an undercover cop infiltrating the inner circle of a corrupt politician via becoming a trusted associate of his incarcerated son. This film was written and directed by the Welsh filmmaker Gareth Evans, and is the sequel to the 2011 film The Raid, and stars Iko Uwais, Arifin Putra, and Oka Antara. Apologies if I've butchered any of those names.
I think you got pretty close, just based on what I'm
hopefully. But basically, I could beat around the bush here, but The Raid 2 is fantastic, and I can't not recommend it.
Okay.
It's got a couple of issues that are worth digging into because I think they're interesting. Namely, the main issue I can think of is the entire plot.
I love when it's like you start with, this is an incredible movie, but the entire plot is bad.
The thing I take issue with is there are movies that have obligatory plots. You kind of have to have a plot to string events together. And it seems like a de facto obligatory plot is just one of the favorites is a conspiracy crime spy thriller thing, web of lies kind of thing. And it gets to the point in the Raid 2, where they directly state that they forgot to write things about the original plot. Like, technically speaking, the main character is supposed to be infiltrating this thing to get corrupt cops, and about, like, after Act 2, like, an hour and a half into the movie, they're like, oh, right, yeah, you're here to get corrupt. They literally call him up and say, remember, it's about the corrupt cops. And it's like, I've just been watching a thing about crime bosses going after each other for, like, an hour now. And it's obviously not important enough that I cared, but it was very interesting to see this because I've seen too many movies where they put that kind of plot as something that appeared to be the reason that you're going to, they assumed that you were going to the movie to see it. Things like Atomic Blonde, Safe Room, Unknown starring Liam Neeson, like these, they're usually star vehicles, and they're usually movies, you probably don't know any of the movies I just said except maybe Atomic Blonde, but they're the movies you forget after you walk out of the theater. Because they're bad. They don't have a plot. It's more like a mystery story written where neither you nor the characters know what's going on, and you sort of just get this bare minimum picture, the tip of an iceberg, a very boring iceberg, where you just have barely enough information to kind of think, okay, I guess that's why that character's acting that way. There's nothing more to it. You never really care, even if they reveal the whole thing, because it's not really a compelling, it's just not fun to watch.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that I remember when Atomic Blonde came out and all the comparisons to John Wick were, coming through. I just kept thinking, like, this story is inscrutable, and these character motivations are impossible to follow because the story is so complicated, and it's just a web of conspiracies that you kind of lose any sense of, like, an emotional connection to what's happening, because you're just like, you don't know what's happening, and the characters don't know what's happening, and you don't really understand the characters, whereas something like John Wick is like, these awful people killed his dog, and he wants to get revenge.
Exactly.
Like, you understand that, and you can totally dig into that. But when
I don't really remember there being much memorable action in Atomic Blonde to make up for it. And that is where the Raid 2 sets itself apart. You don't need to care about any of the plot or anything beyond the characters existing, with one exception, that there's a really good short little sequence in this movie. It's just fantastic action. Just bam, bam, bam. The best part about it, and what I think sets it apart from the Raid 1, is Raid 1 kills off quite a few of its characters very fast. It starts with like 18 people on the good guys' side, and by 15 minutes in, everybody but maybe 2 or 3 are dead. And from then on, you kind of get these one-on-one, long, drawn-out, choreographed fight scenes. And for some people, that's maybe what you want.
Yeah,
and
sure.
That's still in this movie, only it's got a more ensemble kind of cast, almost. So you get a lot of different characters, most of which are really bad people. They kind of drop the good guy for like 2 or 3 acts of this movie. And they're just doing bad things, but they've got this fantastic sense of action. There's so many great shots in this movie, and it is very, very violent and very, very gory. It's a hard R, but it's like to the point of this over-the-top, ridiculous cartoon violence a lot of the time, where you can't help but just like be like laugh at it in spite of how terrible it is. And there's tons of moments like that in this movie, and it's terrible to laugh, but you can't help yourself watching it. It's
gonzo violence is one of the great joys of cinema, and if we're, the day that we lose that is the day that we lose film.
There are just a bunch of beautiful set piece just fights in this movie where just mobs of people are beating each other up like kung fu style, and it's so fun. The thing is, once again, you just got to bear with it through the rest of the content. But there's like good storytelling in it too. Like there's a moment at which they're introducing a new character, and without any words whatsoever, despite him being like this ragged bum-looking guy on the streets, he's the good guy. He gives like a piece of food to his dog, and then he's like stalking a bunch of people with a machete. And normally you'd think like that guy's probably not a good guy, but he beats up all of the bodyguards of this like rich-looking dude, and the rich-looking dude shoves his girlfriend at the bum to like protect himself, and it's like instantly that guy's a jerk and this guy's the good guy without anything having been said. And I was just like, wow, that's pretty cool.
That's some good elegant storytelling right there.
Yeah,
that's the kind of stuff you're looking for in your movies.
Whenever anybody's talking, it's not very good, but when they're not, they can actually do some pretty good stuff. I will say that this movie probably doesn't make much sense being titled The Raid, in spite of being like the same guy and director and starring the same characters and stuff. There aren't really any raids in this movie. The first movie is just a bottle episode, basically, if a movie could be a bottle episode, where a bunch of people run into a building and the entire thing takes place in that building, exactly like Dread, actually, or Die Hard, or whatever else you want to call it. So maybe a little less... maybe a little more conventional as far as the structure of the plot goes, but it's so over the top and entertaining. It's a fun time. Man, now it sounds like I got to put that on my list. That's what I like. I like doing these episodes, Mark, because it all the time I hear from other people whose opinions I respect about why they love certain things, and I'm like, you know what? That's you sold me. I want to see that now. It's not bad. It's fun. Yeah, so I think we all have some homework to do. So all you listeners out there, if you haven't seen a Powell and Pressburger movie, go watch The Red Shoes. And if you haven't seen The Raid 2, go watch The Raid 2. You don't even need to see The Raid 1. Who needs to see The Raid 1? Dumb action movie. It's a very difficult piece of homework, I would say. Well, for a certain kind of person. I think for a certain kind of person, it's right up their alley. But I think that's going to do it for us today, everybody. So we will see you again next week, where we're going to talk about something. Who knows?